And don't get me wrong, I mean, I would love to continue my ride. I would love these experiences. I would love to see the Amazon. I would, you know what I mean? I would love to see the Amazon.
Arie Huggerbrug, also known as Safari Arie, started in St. John's, Newfoundland on November 12, 2019. His mission? To bike the road less traveled. Today is just one pedal closer to the tip of Argentina. All right. Hey, everybody. This is Brandon McCaskill. Welcome to another episode of the Safari Arie Experience. This is the extended version of the Safari Arie Roadshow, where we get an even closer look at the life of Mr. Arie Huggerbrug here, otherwise known as Safari Arie. So, Arie, we were talking offline here, just back and forth about your potential. Well, it's kind of a problem that you're running into to do with finances and financing your ride. And I was hoping just in this episode, just to bring people up to speed with what the situation is, and just so they can get a better understanding of what you're facing right now.
Yeah. So the situation is that I am concerned about the future of the ride. The ride is potentially, probably, likely in some sort of jeopardy moving beyond Belize. Basically, the situation is just to give a quick recap. The original plan, goal, dream of this bike ride was to bike 50,000 kilometers across Canada towards the Arctic, then south, and zigzag my way through 23 more countries over 3 years, and pedal 50,000 kilometers. So the big thing is basically the idea was roughly the time frame was 3 years. So I am currently in central Mexico, and I am 22 months into 36 months. And I am nowhere even close to Argentina, and it's not even going to be feasible to get there, probably in less than 2 more years at the rate I'm going, kind of deal. And so I have and so obviously being unemployed as long as I have been, and just the day-to-day expenses, I am having some challenges and difficulties figuring out how to get beyond Belize. Because I have, for those who don't know, my actual home, my physical house is actually in Belize. And that's actually a tremendous expense, a financial burden that I have been obviously covering for the last 22 months. Basically, to get down to the nuts and bolts, I basically send about 1,000 Canadian dollars for the maintenance of that place, which might sound like a crazy amount, but a couple things is, one, Belize is not as cheap as one might think. Secondly, my home is in the middle of the jungle, and the effect of the land, of the climate, of a jungle climate, on your house and on your property is unbelievably, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very labor intensive. I mean, basically the translation of the climate equals very, very labor intensive for the upkeep. And so I have to pay for that, not to mention house insurance and this and that. Yes.
You said $1,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
So over 3 years, that's 36 grand, right?
1,000. Yeah.
36. Wow.
Yeah. And so currently I've already spent, like, say, for example, $22,000 plus about $3,600 in insurance. And what kind of became like a tipping point is last week I got an email that says, oh, your house needs to be repainted inside and out, and that's going to be an extra $3,000. And the house is actually brand new. So I was not expecting this kind of email for another 3 or 4 more years at least. Yeah. And basically in less than 5 years, they're saying, well, this is what's going to, and I'm like, so it's kind of has me freaked out. And the other aspect of this is, because of this expense on a monthly basis, it's actually created a fair amount of tension between me and my property managers, even to the point where I don't really even know if I'm going to have property managers by the time I get to Belize. So that may basically just kind of cover that whole, like, that might just, fix the whole, I mean, not fix it. I just might, that might just make everything come right to an end, period, kind of deal. So yeah, I am trying to consider my options, kind of deal. And because right now things are not looking so great,
Right.
um, kind of deal.
Yeah, and I mean, when we first met, our goal was to push your content out there to hopefully
Yeah.
get some people interested, people that are able to hopefully like sponsor you. Is that an option for you? Is there a way you can?
Okay. So, all right. So yeah, let's talk about the sponsorship and the GoFundMe options. Um, First of all, like sponsorship, if anyone has ever gone to a website of a corporation that offers sponsorship,
Mm,
they basically have this page and they basically tell you you need to fill out about a week's worth of paperwork. So that means sit in front of your computer for a whole week.
mm,
And then at the bottom of their page, they want all this stuff from you. They say, oh, by the way, we receive 1,000 requests a day, so don't expect a reply. So that is not going to, that's just not a viable option. I'm not going to sit in front of the computer all week for a free tent because that's not going to fix my situation.
yeah.
The other option is like, okay, GoFundMe. And actually what I do want to do is I do want to backtrack um, from the conversation for a moment, because like there's going to be a little bit of back and forth. And I'm actually, in a way, this video actually makes me a little bit nervous because I'm looking at my situation from a certain perspective. And undoubtedly you're going to ask me a couple questions, and my questions may come across as, pessimistic, negative, or unappreciative. So what I first and foremost want to say is that I have had the ride of my life. In my wildest dreams, with I could never have imagined. I could
Mm,
never have hoped for. I mean, the current city I'm in Mexico here. I mean, I just discovered last night that this guy's been following me for 22 months. I didn't even know he never, like, I've had so many like mind blowing experiences, and the amount of generosity has just been, I mean, just yesterday, I was actually handed 200 pesos by a Mexican. When was the last time a Mexican handed Canadian money?
wow.
You know what I mean? Like, so when it comes to my appreciation for
Hmm.
all those that have been a part of the story and the generosity, I mean, I have received more generosity, I'm sure, on this bike ride than any bike tour in the world. It's just been overwhelming. So, first and foremost, I do not want anyone to think that I am not appreciative about anything,
Hmm.
because it is like I said, I can't even comprehend the generosity, and it's made the most amazing bike ride in the world. And that isn't why, in part, as I transitioned to GoFundMe, like many people have suggested, well, why don't you do GoFundMe?
Yeah.
I actually have a really hard time um, putting a GoFundMe platform out there asking for money
Hmm.
from people, because of the amount of generosity I have already received. Like, while the world was going crazy with COVID, I was just pedaling my bike, just having the time of my life.
Hmm.
Like, where people were losing their jobs, they were, their health, their anxiety, everything was going through the roof. They couldn't see family members. Do you know what my biggest COVID, what's the word I'm looking for? My biggest COVID negative experience was, do you know what
Hmm.
that was?
What?
Is in San Francisco, I couldn't visit Alcatraz.
Hmm.
So for the last, well, how COVID has been, what, about 18 or like 16 to 18 months. In
Hmm.
16 to 18 months, my worst experience is I couldn't go to Alcatraz.
Hmm.
How many people can say that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, not, it doesn't mean, of course there was other, minor, but I'm just saying, like, in the grand scheme of things, my biggest, COVID experience was I couldn't go to Alcatraz when I was in San Francisco.
Hmm.
So I've had nothing but the time of my life for these last 22 months, and people have been beyond generous to the point where I can't even comprehend. I mean, I have been in complete strangers' homes for up to a week,
Wow.
7 days. I mean, can you even imagine, like, inviting some stranger into your house and he stays for 7 days? Like,
Hmm.
that's crazy. No, like, that's nuts. I mean, if your relatives or your family said, hey, I'm coming for 7 days,
That ain't
you
happening.
you exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the generosity. So the thing is so now I'm going to ask people for money so I can keep having the time of my life, as if I already haven't. Like, so, and I'm not 100% discounting GoFundMe. People are, I mean, there's been some valid
Well,
arguments.
let me counter that.
Okay. Yeah.
So you and I have talked about this offline, that there's been people that they're inspired by your ride.
Sure. Yes.
So
No.
what if people like that would see investing in you as something that they benefit from?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is you're right there. I mean, while I've received a tremendous amount of generosity, I don't discount. It's very humbling, and it's an honor when I get messages from people to say, "Look, you've inspired me for this. You know what I mean?" And I realize, and yes, and in a sense, it would be a shame for the bike ride to end and not continue that. I've actually had many people message on or comment on Facebook like that I'm a Canadian ambassador, kind of deal. And it's crazy to think, but I mean, in one sense, there is some truth to it. And you're right. Like there is that, there is a little piece of me that says, maybe I should consider the GoFundMe pathway. The only one thing is though is in order for something like that to be successful, like you need to actually invest a fair amount of energy into, and I simply actually don't even know where I would get that time, in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose I could do that in Belize, for example, but like I don't know. And this is actually where, and this is where I'm going to now sort of start to go on the, I don't want to say the defensive side or the pessimistic side or the negative side kind of deal, because in a sense, these are important considerations.
Yeah.
And my nature,
realistic, right?
Yes, I'm trying to be realistic. And my nature is to push back against, if you, for example, if you're saying you should do a GoFundMe, I want to know what your conviction is in a sense. So I'm going to push against that idea, and I'm going to see how convicted you are in a sense, or, are you going to break kind of deal? And so the thing is, let's say I do a GoFundMe campaign, because the thing is okay, so let's talk numbers for a second. I figure I am looking at probably about 2.5 years to continue my ride the way I'm going. So I'm looking at $50,000 to $60,000 to keep going, and that's not pennies. That's $50,000 to $60,000. So one, trying to wrap my head around that being a successful campaign over a bike ride, that just actually seems like impossible. Secondly, let's say I do a GoFundMe campaign and it raises like $2,000 or $3,000. Like, I have no choice but to look at that and go, wow, you failed miserably, even at the ride. I mean, those that engage me on social media will know I comment, I respond to everything. I post 5 times a day. I have taken 29,000 photos. I have posted 200, in Zacatecas, I actually posted my 250th blog post, 250,000 words typed since my bike ride started.
Yeah.
And if I look at a GoFundMe campaign where I raised $2,000 out of $60,000, to me, in a sense, that will be in the forefront of just, you failed miserably at this ride kind of deal.
Right.
And then the other thing is it's and you know what? And I actually think it would fail. I really don't think that people would donate. I really don't. I mean, and once again, not to sound negative or this and that, but it's like overall, for the most part, we can't even get people to subscribe to YouTube. Like we have like 375 subscribers, give or take a few. I have 3,000 Facebook fans. Now, of course, not all of them are watching YouTube, and maybe, who knows, maybe our shows suck and that's why they don't subscribe. But the thing is in a sense, from a monetized perspective, one of the easiest ways to monetize is YouTube, and it doesn't even cost my followers a penny. They just have to hit a button. And so if we can't even get the followers to subscribe to YouTube, now they're going to donate money. Like, I don't see that happening. And so, and the other thing is like, and obviously, and the other thing is like, people are like, oh, we'll set up GoFundMe. And I actually have a belief that, because this is the thing, like, people are telling me to do a GoFundMe. It's like, I don't need to do a GoFundMe, because you just have to go to my website and there's a PayPal link. You can donate all the money you want right now. Yeah. And so all the people that suggest GoFundMe, I actually don't believe I'm not saying every one of them, but I don't actually believe they would actually contribute to GoFundMe, because they came up with the idea. Yeah. So they're, as if I never heard of GoFundMe, it's their idea. So they actually don't have to contribute, because they gave the idea that's going to save my bike ride. That is more than $60,000 is worth, kind of deal. So, I mean, and maybe, like I said, that may sound pessimistic, but you just have to go to my website. There's a PayPal link. Like I said, 250,000 blog posts, 5 posts a day. Like, I spend an average of 40 plus hours. I spend about 40 plus hours documenting my ride. Now, I would do that anyways. If there wasn't a single fan, I would do that anyways. So I would, you know what I mean? So I don't do it for the money by any means. But it's like, if my blog, like, cause I mean, every once in a while I wake up and there'll be an email from PayPal that says somebody donated $15. And wow, and like I said, from the beginning, the amount of generosity I have received is completely overwhelming. Completely overwhelming. Yeah. Interestingly enough, it's mostly people that I run into on the ride. And then it is followers. I mean, I believe because of the effort I put into social media, people following, they see, hey, I'm coming this direction. They message me, like this guy right here, where I am. He's been following my ride since November. I mean, what more can you ask for than to meet a fan who's been following your ride for 22 months? Yeah. And I didn't even know until I actually showed up in his living room last night, and he's like, I've been following you since November. I mean, what more can you possibly hope for? Yeah. So like I said, don't for a second think that there's any lack of appreciation. Yeah. That being said, though, when it comes to the amount of work I do and the few financial donations that I receive online, I don't even pay for my website. And but I pay for it out of my pocket. Even YouTube, in order for you to get the video footage to turn into the videos you do, I pay $30 a month to Dropbox, because those video file sizes are too large to just send in an email or whatever. They have to go through the cloud, and Dropbox charges me $30 a month to send the footage to you, so that, and then how many hundreds of hours have you spent editing all these videos? And so basically, for all intent and purposes, it is at a loss. Yeah. Kind of deal. Well, my hope is, like, how am I supposed to get optimistic about a GoFundMe campaign?
Yeah. Well, like, let's put myself here. Like, the reason I volunteer my time is because it's an honor to have a part in your story. Because you're doing it. You're making it happen.
Yes.
If I can use my skills in any way and my time to kind of push that forward, I'd like to believe that there's people that do that, right?
Yeah.
People that are sitting back thinking, how can I?
I love being able to share my story with other people. Like now, this gentleman here, Fernando, he is part of my story. kind of deal, in a very special way, because like I said, he's been following my ride for 22 months and now I'm under his roof. This is an amazing story, for example.
Yeah.
Now going back to another thing where you just actually said about, about like, hey, wanting to be a part of this story kind of deal. I've actually had, I mean, not tons, but I've had a good handful of people that reach out and they're like, yeah, like your story is amazing. It needs to continue. I want in. Tell me, like, I want in. I want to be there to help you, to support you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's have a conversation. What are you thinking? Tell me what you're thinking. And, like, let me get to know you kind of deal. And I basically let them do kind of all the talking kind of deal, because I don't want to tell them my vision or my, you know what I mean? Because I don't want that to prevent them from telling me what they are thinking, because they may have some special gifts or interests that, so I want them to be free with, and so I go, okay, tell me the deal. And I listened to him and I said, that's awesome. I said, that's cool. I said, now I'm going to kind of explain where my angle is and how I see them connecting kind of deal. And you know what happens? The next day, I never hear from him.
Yeah.
On 2 separate occasions, I have reached out to what I thought were promising possibilities of potentially starting an online t-shirt company, try to brand the Safari Arie. And both times, like, they were like, holy crap, this is, yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah.
And basically nothing. I've even reached out to public relations. I paid like over $1,000. I was so pissed. I paid $1,000 to get a media kit done. And then also a sponsorship kit.
Yeah.
And the reason I got I was only gonna get a media kit, but this guy convinced me to do a sponsorship kit because he was a public relations guy. And I went to his website, and like 80%, like, he's a public relations guy, but 80% of his portfolio was bike related.
Yeah.
I was like, holy smokes, I just hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
I have a public relations, because long story short, this bike ride was almost sponsored way back in 2011. And they actually got me a public relations person. And this woman knew nothing. All she knew was how to put on parties. And I actually had to walk away because this woman was clueless about what I was about to embark on.
Yeah.
And so anyways, so I reached out on Upwork, on the website for contract work. And because I want this help to put a media kit together.
Yeah.
And this guy responds, and I look at his portfolio, and it's like 80% all bike related. And I'm like, holy smokes, I just hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, for sure, do me a sponsorship kit, because he's like, yeah, we can do this. So I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So I paid him $1,000 to do the media kit, the sponsorship kit. Nothing.
Man.
So the thing is so don't think that I had, because that's like, so, I mean, this is the other aspect, and in a sense, it's a full disclosure kind of deal. So I am 48. I'm unemployed, of course, and I'm uneducated. I was a long haul truck driver prior 6.5 years leading up to this bike ride. It's been 22 months since I was in a truck. When I was in a truck to save money for this ride, I was working 90 hours, 80 hours a week. I was eating 1 meal a day, 2 showers a week kind of deal. I burned out multiple times a year. I am not interested in being in a truck again in my life. I mean, it was the greatest job of my entire life. Yeah. The company that I work for no longer has a trucking division. I was actually paid top rate for the job I did. It was the greatest accomplishment of my life, but I've been there, done it. So basically, I'm looking at this ride going, I'm a basically, well, I mean, at the time I was 46, 47, uneducated, technically unemployed when I start this ride person. And so, and that is part of the motivation, part of the reason I document the way I document my ride, the reason I put in as much hours, the reason I'm as prolific as I am kind of deal. And part of that reason was to create and build a Canadian audience per se. to build a brand.
Yeah.
And so this is also coming to my reason as to, does it actually make sense to move on like beyond Belize? And so this is my point. So I biked through a Canadian winter. Everyone said I couldn't do it, that I would die.
Yeah.
COVID hit. Everyone said, stay at home, don't travel. I continued across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There was border restrictions to get in the US. I flew into the US. I was probably the only Canadian. As far as I know, I regularly posted to Facebook bike groups, are there any other Canadians in the US? I never got a single response.
Yeah.
So I went through the US through COVID kind of deal. I entered Mexico June 9th. Everyone said, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Basically, for the last 3 months, I have literally shown the whole world how friendly and safe Mexico actually is, when everyone thinks Mexico is one of the most dangerous countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say these things as like in a sense of like bragging or to sound arrogant or ignorant. None of this was really planned.
Yeah.
My plan was just to bike across Canada. When I did my first bike ride in 2011, I had a single host, one host.
Yeah.
So the whole hosting thing was not even on my radar at all. Yeah. And then I bike across Canada. I have 55 hosts, and ultimately I share with Canada how amazing Canada is, kind of deal. And like in Mexico it's this most dangerous country. You're going to die for sure. I'm at my 15th host. So that means I'm at my 80th host of this ride so far and counting. 80 hosts. My point is from a corporate perspective of like, say, potential sponsorship or whatever, nothing. Like, I'm not like, obviously I have some very faithful followers that are passionate about the ride. If someone usually ever says anything negative about me, watch out, because my fans are gonna
pounce,
set you straight, kind of deal. But from a corporate perspective, crickets. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So if I cannot financially get myself to Argentina beyond Belize, and I said I would be on the road 3 years. By the time I get to Belize, it's going to be close to 30. Well, I don't know. It's going to be more than 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, in one sense, and don't get me wrong. I can only imagine what the experiences are moving forward.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like I would challenge anyone to try to replicate the ride I have had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have hundreds and hundreds of stories that just you can't fathom, kind of deal. And so, because the reality is that if I end up broke before I get to Argentina, then I have to fly back to Canada. And that's not a good situation at all for me, period. Because I have nothing left in Canada. Yeah. And let's just say I get back into a truck. Well, the thing is, by then I'll be out of the truck for so many years. I'm going to have to go back to school to get comfortable. Because it's driving an 18-wheeler. That's not like getting back in the car because you haven't been in a car for 6 years. Like, I have to go back and train, kind of deal. And that's not cheap. That's to go back to school is $5,000 to $10,000 probably. And then the first $1,000 of every paycheck has to go to Belize, so that they can live their dream. Because it's a Canadian couple that are my property managers. Basically, what's happening right now is I finance their dream to live there. And so if I run out of money before I get to Argentina, then I am forced to fly back to Canada. Figure out something, whether I'm driving in a truck. But in my opinion, if I have to go back to Canada, in my opinion, in my world, that's 10 steps backwards in my life.
Right.
Now, of course, you got to do what you got to do. If that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do. But for me, that's 10 steps backwards in my life. And the first $1,000 that I make, which is not chump change, the first $1,000 gets sent to Belize. So basically what I get to look towards is a future of financing their dream. And the other thing is they're not young anymore. Like they are considerably older than me.
Yeah.
So like, if I don't establish myself in Belize in the near future, like it's completely over kind of deal.
So let me try to understand this. Maybe you can just break it down here. So November 12th, you head off to accomplish this ride of your dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you had your finances all planned out. Like this is going to fall into place. And
more or less. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And
well,
I'm actually doing better. I'm doing better than I anticipated because of the generosity of people inviting me into their home. I mean, like I'm doing much better. But the thing is I never anticipated the hosting. I never anticipated the documenting the way it did. I never anticipated COVID, of course, no one did, kind of deal. Like I am staying at people's home. Like I was in Zacatecas like 6 or 7 days, and I still was not. If you go to my website right now, this moment, it's actually not caught up. And I was there 7 days. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to, and now don't get me wrong, I take a break here and there, watch an episode of Star Trek here, whatever. But I'm going to bed at 1 a.m. every morning. 1 a.m. every morning to edit photos, write blogs, upload this, upload that. Like people don't quite appreciate actually how much work it is for the most part, unless you actually run a website.
Right.
And so
I guess my question is, you had this plan. What happened that's kind of thrown you? Is it this repair, this $3,000 repair?
Well, that's
years for your house, or is what's
not? No, I mean that's more of a tipping point of going. That's kind of like it's like a reality check. It's like I don't know. It's like putting your finger too close to the stove element, getting burned. It's like all of a sudden you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's just like. Yeah, it was more like just, I mean, because like a couple of months ago it was, because like I said, the house is rebuilt brand new, which was a huge, what happened was when I first got into the truck, when I was first finally the first time in my life, actually making a regular proper paycheck, I get this email that says, your house is being pulled in 3 different directions from this massive tree behind your house. The roots have kind of grown because it was just a cement pad foundation. And so the roots had grown under and around, and now the roots were expanding. And so that was pulling the house. And so the problem is I got a low ball estimate, what they thought, how they were going to fix it. Basically, the idea was dismantle the house, put in like pillars, and rebuild the house about 3.5, 4 feet off the ground, and then put a deck around the house. And then that way the roots could do whatever they want. And I got a lowball estimate. And I just thought, well, I'm finally making a real paycheck. It didn't sound like it would be such a big deal given, and I didn't probably think about it enough. And I just said, okay, yeah, all right, let's do it. This is the time. If there's a time, because even I'm thinking about the bike ride, but it's like probably better to get this done now than after the bike ride, because then things are just going to be more money, and who knows if I even have money left. So I just said, yeah, do it. Anyways, like most people who have done a renovation, who find out kind of after the fact, is that basically it ended up being like 3-4 times more money, and the job was like 3-4 times bigger. And basically, ultimately, I've ended up with this kind of, even though in a sense the house is the same size, but with the deck and a more of a finished look and everything, it's now like this massive maintenance nightmare. And probably, I'll disclose, worst financial decision of my entire life. I should have just let the house rot and be done with it. And I didn't. I screwed up, and I said, okay, rebuild it. And so it is what it is. Let me address people, well, you should sell it. Okay, so from the house perspective, I have no attachment to this house whatsoever. I've actually only been in the house 3 times because it was rebuilt, and I've been on a bike ride for almost 2 years. So I've only been in the house 3 times, and twice was with the ex-fiance. So I would have tears of joy if I got an email right now that said it burned down. Tears of joy. Tears of joy. But the land that that house sits on, for all intent and purposes, as weird as that might sound, I plan to be buried on that property. Which is not crazy because there's 2 other people buried on the property on the farm, not where my house is. But
Yeah.
one way or another, my plan, like I've already got my life figured out, my death. Basically, in 32 years, I will be 80. I will die of natural causes. They will discover me 2 weeks later. And because of the heat and the humidity of the jungle, there will not be much left. So basically, the village will be like, what happened to that old guy, Arie? We haven't seen him in a week or 2. They will walk down to my house, a 45-minute walk. They will discover me. Like I said, whatever's left, they will grab a shovel. They will dig like a very, very shallow grave, and they will scrape me in. Yeah. And that's where I'll be buried.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. I love my land. I love my land. I would rather see that house rot than sell.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
What happens if you just refuse to keeping it? Like you said, you don't.
It will rot. I mean, the termites will get in. The jungle will grow.
Just let it do that.
In a sense, I have threatened. So in a sense, hold on, let me grab a sip.
Okay.
In a sense, I've threatened my property managers, and I'm just going to let it rot. This is the situation in a sense. And basically, I've already kind of discussed, okay, I have other dreams and goals and passions. Basically, my plan was at the end of this bike ride was that I was then going to therefore dedicate the rest of my life to planting 1 million trees one way or another. Mm-hmm. I want to use my land in Belize as a nursery to raise seedling trees to be planted all over Belize, kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And so, like I stated earlier about the documenting, was to build a brand, build credibility, kind of deal. And I thought, well, if I bike 50,000 kilometers to Argentina, that will give me a bunch of credibility to maybe approach corporations that might help me get to that 1 million trees. Because my goal is actually, once I reach the 1 million, just like a businessman, that first 1 million is the hardest. Usually the next millions come a lot easier. So I actually want to turn the M to a B, kind of deal. And so my thinking was that if I document my ride the way I do it, and then I built credibility that I can walk into corporations and say, hey, I'm Safari Arie and yada, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
So now I'm looking at the situation of, like I said, I biked through a Canadian winter. Everyone said I would die. I lived. I biked through COVID. Everyone said stay at home. I lived. Never gotten COVID. Biked through the US. Mm-hmm. I biked into Mexico. Everyone said you're going to die. Instead, I showed everyone how generous. I mean, Mexicans give me money. Okay. So I've done all this. And like I said, from a corporate perspective, crickets. And I have actually reached out. I don't get a lot of time, but I spent 60 days in Vegas. I reached out to magazines. I reached out to, I've reached out to people to say, hey, this is my story. Is there a story? Are you interested in writing something? I don't mess around, but I don't mess around. Like, I have put tremendous effort into trying to grow a brand and just see what door, and that, if the door didn't open, I guess it was never meant to. But the point is, and this was actually something I was thinking about prior to this bike, like prior to this situation, it's like, I'm not really getting any kind of like corporate notice. And it's like, how am I going to plant 1 million trees by myself when, and like I said, people would say, hey, your story's great. I want to be a part of it, and then all of a sudden they're gone. They don't, I basically, like, you're the only guy that has actually stuck around other than my web developer. Just shout out to Jordan. Thank you very much, Jordan, for my amazing website. Most of the work he does for free now, unless it has to go to his brother, and then his brother charges me. But I have Jordan, my web guy, and I have you. And basically, that's it. And so I'm thinking, like, other than my core audience, nobody really cares. And I mean, it's not like I have this attitude like people should care. I mean, we all have busy lives. We all have other things. We all had, especially COVID. And I'm sure COVID has had something to do with everything. But I'm like, nobody really cares about what I'm doing. And so I'm thinking, how am I going to plant 1 million trees? And then that's when it hit me. It's the same as pedaling 23,500 kilometers, which is basically where I'm at.
Mhm.
It's basically, how do you pedal 23,500 kilometers? 1 kilometer at a time. So how am I going to plant 1 million trees? 1 tree at a time. And if someone wants to jump on board, great. But I've kind of come to a realization that it's like, I just have to, just like the biking, I just have to do it by myself. And then you get to a certain point, you look back, you're like, holy crap, how did I get from Mexicali all the way to this city? 1 kilometer at a time. And that's the other aspect. That's the other thing I'm thinking about, is because the thing is hypothetically speaking, let's say I continue biking to Nicaragua or Costa Rica, and then I run out of money. Well, what did that accomplish? I mean, if I biked across Canada and I biked through the US and I've done Mexico, like these are the 3 big countries in North America. It's like, if that doesn't attract attention, then biking through Nicaragua is, no Canadian corporation is going to be like, oh my goodness, there's a Canadian biking through Nicaragua. We got to get on this. So what I'm thinking right now is that I take some extra time. Like, I'm actually thinking of bypassing Guatemala and going from Chiapas to like towards the Yucatan to enter Belize, because I was originally going to go through Guatemala to get to Belize, and I'm thinking of actually staying in Mexico instead of going into Belize, just because you know, I'm actually building a fairly strong network here in Mexico. My fan base in Mexico is growing considerably. But I'm actually thinking of taking extra time to actually travel the entire country of Belize before I officially, end. And excuse me, I'm thinking that I should actually be investing more time in creating a community and networking with Belizeans, because that is ultimately where these trees are going to be planted, kind of deal. And so, like I said, if I arrive in Nicaragua, nobody is going to care. But if I spend time in Belize, and especially with my bike, because it does attract attention, I mean, hence the craziness in Mexico. If I spend this time in Belize and build my network there, because these are the people that potentially I would deal with on a regular basis or potentially reach out for help or whatever, I should actually invest my time there, kind of deal. And then, I mean, let's face it, life is, I mean, well, one, I've had the most, that's the thing, is I've had the most amazing ride you could ever imagine. Like I said, I challenge anyone to duplicate it. So in one sense, there's an aspect where it's like, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I would love to continue my ride. I would love these experiences. I would love to see the Amazon. I would, you know what I mean? I would love to see the Amazon. But it's kind of like there's an, I mean, because the other thing, I was in a truck for 6.5 years leading up to this bike ride. I've actually been homeless technically for 8.5 years, because in a truck every day was in a new city or a new state. And then in a bike, like, and I mean, even in the truck, like for 4 years, I had an apartment that I would get to on the weekend or every other weekend. But for 2 years, the last 2 years in a truck, I actually lived in my truck. So I've actually I've technically been homeless for about 8.5 years, but I've definitely 100% been homeless for the last 4 years, kind of deal. And so there's just like, so I've seen so much, and it's like, do I need to see another cathedral in Nicaragua, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like I said, I committed to 3 years. I'm going to be fairly close to that point in Belize, to a point where going forward is, like I said, maybe I'll get to Nicaragua, maybe I'll get to Costa Rica in that that 3 year.
Yeah.
So what? You know what I mean? Like, I am better investing that time and that money, getting myself established in Belize and start working on the million trees.
Oh, you know
You
what
know what
this
I mean?
has
Like,
me thinking about?
yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's actually helpful because what I'm seeing, I think this might be a problem with, like we're talking about how getting even subscribers, can't speak, subscribers is actually a hard task to do.
Yeah.
But like, what would happen if we made a better effort to more clearly define your mission about the trees? Yeah, like everybody knows planting trees is good, but why are we planting trees?
Yeah, no, and it actually, well, it's okay. Well,
Climate
first of
change.
all, what's that?
Climate change. That's the key word.
Yeah. Um, it's okay. So funny. It's one thing when at first, when you started talking about how difficult it was getting subscribers, I was thinking that you were going to say, if you just act like a clown and do stupid stuff, then we would have 1 million subscribers.
I've tried that.
And it's like, no, I mean, and that's, if you haven't figured that out by now, I'm just not that person. I'm not charismatic in that sense. I'm passionate about the things I'm passionate about, but I don't jump in front of a video. And
No.
if you look at my 29,000 photos, you will see almost no photos with people in, almost none. I feel uncomfortable taking, like, people take photo. I feel like if someone wants to take a photo, of course I'm used to someone taking a photo of me, but
Yeah.
I don't want to ask some random stranger, hey, you look Mexican, kind of strange with this wrinkly face. Like, can I take a photo of you? Like, no, I can't. I can't. It's just not, I just can't do that. So,
No.
but I mean, I can't get goofy in a video, in front of a video. And I
just mean like,
yeah. Okay. So about the trees. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it's funny. It's interesting because I got in an argument with one of my brothers, and I'm not going to mention his name, yesterday. And he kept going on about the trees, as if the trees were going to solve my problem. And it's like, one, like I said, I left Zacatecas with a day's worth of work still not done after being there a whole week.
Yeah.
Now and the thing is that was always the plan. The plan was always to incorporate the trees in, but what actually happened, well, first what happened was winter. And then I realized that this bike ride is all about survival. I actually need to figure out how to survive a Canadian winter. And then what happened was when winter ended, COVID was the same day. And then everything shut down. Well, when everything shut down, people were working from home, offices were closed. You couldn't reach out to anyone for anything because everything was shut down. Yeah. It became about COVID. And basically, in a sense, it's still about COVID.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, though, is as I continued across the US or Canada, people kept inviting me into their homes. So it continued this Canadian generosity. That was the theme of the ride.
Yeah.
And then I come into the US and it's still COVID and everything is shut down. Like California was in complete lockdown. And it's actually amazing how much along the Pacific coast is actually quite isolated where, like there was just nothing for the most part. And actually when I was in Las Vegas, I actually did make some effort because I was sitting in front of a computer. I made some effort to change some of the things on my website to be more tree oriented, to incorporate the tree thing. But then I got back on the road and it was just, I hit Utah. Utah was like represented like 10,000 photos just in that state because it was so beautiful, which was a tremendous amount of work editing and yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But then Utah is very, very isolated. And then I went to the Grand Canyon and then I hit the 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I got into Mexico and it's all desert. So there is no trees in the Baja. And then I crossed into to the mainland. And more or less ever since then, it has become complete Mexican generosity. I mean, there are days I am sharing over 5 posts plus on Facebook. Like I'm in post overkill. So like, where am I going to squeeze a tree this or a tree that when I am already over posting in the grand scheme of things? I don't have a team behind me or supporters. Like, I mean, it was my argument with my brother. Well, first it's like, well, how does that solve my problem now in Mexico? 3,000 kilometers to home. Like all of a sudden, if I start posting about trees, all of a sudden I'm going to raise $20,000 a year. Like, no.
Hmm.
So it's just like,
And my
yeah.
thought is not necessarily like posting more and encouraging people to like sponsor you to plant more trees, but to get that dialogue going where, like, because you were just saying you were taught, like, everybody knows the theme of your ride has been like relationships and meeting
Yeah.
people. But if they also get ingrained in them that your mission is also about,
Mhm.
combating
Okay.
climate
Well,
change,
yes.
then that's
And
something to
one,
get behind.
okay. So, well, one, I'm just going to backtrack just before, because one thing I did forget to mention,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm getting this argument with my brother.
Yeah.
And so I took a screenshot because with one tree planted, I have a donation platform that I don't share nearly as enough. I had planned to actually share it once a week, but because of the amount of posts that I share on a daily basis, it
Mm-hmm.
usually goes completely to the end of the line.
Yeah.
But anyways, I took a screen. I had to scroll all the way through to the last time I shared my one tree planted platform. And I took a screenshot and had, I don't know, I can't remember. I didn't even look, but I think I had like 3 or 4 likes, 3 or 4. And then I took a screenshot of the last post I left in Zacatecas.
Yeah.
And it had 93 likes and hearts. 93.
Hmm.
So, like, I don't want to say nobody cares about trees, because I know many people care about trees. But when it comes to my bike ride and the theme that my bike ride has taken on, nobody cares about trees.
Hmm.
That being said, in a way, I don't actually care if that's because the trees is my passion.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the way I see it is that if it looks like this bike ride ends in Belize, then that will be my focus day in, day out. And so while I am overworked with just keeping up with the documenting of going through Mexico, in Belize, I will now have that time to transition my content to more tree oriented. Because like I said, if I start inserting a whole lot of tree stuff, which I would love to do, but if only if the day was 48 hours, then I could maybe post 10 times a day. But if I start inserting tree stuff today, that's not going to solve a $20,000 a year expense. It's not. And like I said, one tree planted platform share, 3 likes. My last host, 93. Nobody, I don't want to say that nobody cares about trees, but when it comes to my ride, nobody cares. When the ride's over, you can unfollow me, you can unfriend me if that's your choice. Now, I mean, just as a sales pitch, if I do stay in Belize, trust me, the content's still going to keep going. I mean, I live in the middle of the jungle. Every day is a wow day. I see so much life, animals, creatures. The content will I'm basically now have to kind of create a life for me, build a chicken coop, raise chickens to feed myself. Like, the content is still going to be there, kind of deal. So, boohoo if you unsubscribe or stop following, but I think you will actually, you know what I mean? Like, life does not get boring by living in the jungle. The content will still flow, but in my opinion, I'm only 3,000 kilometers, 3 to 6 months away. Like I said, if I start inserting tree stuff right now, that's not going to solve any of my problems. But when my ride ends, that will be my new focus, my new priority. And so then, yes, then I will transition to the environment, trees, animals. There's no cathedrals in Belize, kind of deal. Like, I mean, I post, and I only post like a fraction, the smallest fraction of the photos I take of churches. But there's no cathedrals in Belize, so it'll all be natural wildlife and jungle and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I know, like I said, to me, I don't see any sense in putting the tree, pushing it at this point. If I would have loved if I had a team behind me in Canada, like, then that would have been the force that I would have pushed. But I'm not upset that it didn't happen. Like, I mean, like I said, the stories of generosity, especially during the time of COVID, and Like that's in my opinion, I think that's what everyone needed to see. And also like Mexico, like how many people said I was going to die. I have not been concerned for a single second, not a
Yeah.
single second. Now, does that mean like that's not something's going to happen? Yeah, no, tomorrow something, today something could happen. But I'm just saying I have not been concerned for a single second in this country. Everyone said I would die, and I have showed more stories than you can even imagine. Like I don't even know if they're like, I don't even think it's even possible for someone, and that's just the benefit of being on a bicycle. I mean, people backpack here, like people come from Europe and from Canada, they fly to Cancun and they go to hostel to hostel to hostel.
Yeah.
I'm going to bet you that someone who has been backpacking this country 10 years doesn't have the same stories that I have in the last month. Not even a fraction of them. I mean, they'll say, yes, of course, the people are friendly. They'll agree. Oh, yes, these are the friendliest people in the world. But they won't have a fraction of the stories that I have because I was on a bike. And so, in my opinion, what I'm doing right now is I'm telling the world, I'm showing the world that Mexico is an amazing place to come, and you should too. So like putting the trees in, I just don't see the benefit to that. That just mixes the message in my opinion. Now, was this the message I expected? No, I didn't expect any of this Mexican experience. I thought these people were going to look at me like, oh, there's the white gringo, you know what I mean? Like and that's what I expected. I thought I was just going to pedal through and not look at people like just because people are going to look at me like I'm strange.
Let me ask you this. What do you think Terry Fox's story would have been like if he hadn't done it to raise money for cancer?
Wow. Wow. I did not, I don't even, I mean, when it comes to like that's, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to even.
Like, do you think less people would have caught on to his mission?
You're meaning in the sense like if I had, like, what if I had raised money, if I had been trying to raise money from the beginning? That's okay. That's your,
yeah.
Well, there's more than one article out there that says raising money for a cause during a bike ride. That idea, that fad is literally a fad. It's kind of dead. Like basically, like I actually read some articles, and basically the gist of the articles was that Canadians donate X amount of dollars per year. And it doesn't change because X amount of people go through or anything happens. It's like if an average Canadian donates $500 a year, if they give me 400, for example, just to round numbers, if they give me $400, then that basically meant that whoever they gave that 400 to last year didn't get it, kind of deal. So it's not like they, the average Canadian donates $500 and then Safari Arie comes through and they give $100 to me. And so all of a sudden they donated 600. Yeah. No, if they, whatever they gave me is money that didn't go to someone else as far as like a cause. Statistically, based on my reading research, that's the case. Now, don't get me wrong. There are, and also part of that article was also that, yes, Terry Fox kind of started that idea of raising money by crossing Canada. But in many ways, like after that, like there's been more failures than successes, let's put it this way. Now, if you have the right team behind you and the right corporations behind you, and they want to spend enough money, they can create a successful campaign. But I don't have first, I don't have the support, and two, I don't really have the tools to create a successful campaign. In the sense that, and I don't, this is going to sound, people are going to hate me for the way I make this sound. And you can disagree with me, and because there are examples of successful, but it's like, in one sense, I'm only going to use a very minor example because I don't even want to go to what you actually need to be. But like, in order for me, almost for me to do that, like I have to be a woman. Like I'm a white Caucasian guy. I represent 95% of all the adventures that are ever done in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So who cares? But when a woman does it, like, holy smokes. And I don't say that like, I mean, when I follow Facebook bike groups, I can post a photo of my bike and I'll get 10 likes.
Mm-hmm.
And a woman posts the same photo and there's 300 likes. Okay. You know what I mean? And people can hate me for saying that. So be it. It's just, and it's a world I accept, but I'm just saying, like, I don't fit the category of success because, like I said, I represent 95% of all the adventures that are done in the world. White Caucasian guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm not part of the if I was a minority,
mm-hmm.
look out, baby, look out. I'm raising millions, but I'm a white guy. And like I said, I don't say that in a negative way. I'm just saying that's the world we live in,
mm-hmm.
kind of deal. So and like I said, I had no, I was not, that was the thing. Like I sort of mentioned how I had a PR person because I was going to get my bike ride sponsored and it was to raise money kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if I were to set up to raise money, for example, and I was like, okay, I want to raise $50,000 crossing Canada.
Yeah.
If I only raise $5,000, like I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Like for the rest of my life, I'm the guy that biked across Canada hoping to raise $50,000 and I only raised $5,000. And the thing is it's like, well, you know, like you should take a risk. Like you should, you know, like, I mean, you don't know unless you don't try, and fortune favors the bold.
Yeah.
But it's like, let's say I raised five, let's say I mean, just use the Terry Fox example for cancer. Let's say I raised 5,000 out of $50,000 for cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does cancer care? No, because I mean, not to go into a completely controversial situation, but there's way more money in medicine than a cure. I mean, could you imagine if the world stopped raising money for cancer? I mean, they raise what, $70 trillion every single year.
Yeah.
You think there's ever going to be a cure for, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that they don't make advancements in this and yada, yada, yada. But I'm just saying, do you think if cancer disappeared, there goes that $70 trillion that people raise money for.
And
so, but anyways, my point was that if I raise $5,000 for cancer's not going to go away kind of deal, or wherever. It's not, you know, for my ride, like I said, it evolved into what it did. And it was about Canadians being generous.
Yeah.
And that's what, and obviously that's what Canadians needed to see. Hence the ride would never have evolved into that if it wasn't needed.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So, you know, and that's the other thing is I have zero regrets about any of the decisions. Like if I had a choice between being right at this very place right this second, or have been made my way all the way to Bolivia by now,
mm-hmm.
I would pick here, because nothing, like the stories that I've had, like nothing will ever, like I said, the guy that I arrived at his place last night, and he's like, oh, by the way, I've been following you since Newfoundland. Like 22 months ago.
Yeah.
Like as if Bolivia would be a more amazing experience than have some guy tell me that. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't trade. If I had foreseen or was I would not change or trade a single decision about it. I should also just mention that I did write a blog post. We'll put that in the notes. But like I would not change or trade anything, because like I said, I challenge anyone to duplicate this bike ride.
So where are you at right now, like in decision mode? Like, do you know what you're going to be doing, or is this something you got to think about for a
I mean,
while?
that's the beautiful thing, is that I am probably 3 to 6 months at the rate I'm going before I get to Belize.
Mm-hmm.
As this bike ride has proven, I have no clue what's around the next corner. No clue.
So you don't have to make a decision.
So I am not making a decision today, tomorrow, in 6 weeks. I am not making a decision at all. I am going to be open
For
And
things to
that's, I
change.
mean, that's sort of, I mean, that's one thing that I have learned on this bike ride. Luckily, I learned it very early,
Yeah.
is to be open to everything and anything. And that is in part why I've had the stories I've had. I mean, I explained in our road show just prior to this,
Mhm.
like someone pointed out, like, why are you coming to this city? Like
Mhm.
it's off your route. And I didn't even really realize because I didn't even look at it close enough. And I looked at it, I was like, oh crap, you're right. It is off my route. But I
Yeah.
said, well, someone invited me. So that's my priority is I always try to meet people that invite me. And then, like I explained in the other, in the road show, that person canceled. And last minute, I messaged this guy because he had reached out. And then when I get here last night, I find out he's been following my ride he never said anything. He never said a single thing until I was sitting in his living room. And he's like, oh, by the way, I've been following you since Newfoundland 22 months ago. And I'm like, what? You
Yeah.
never said any, you did, if you like, I mean, didn't even, you know what I mean? So it's like, I have no clue what's around the next corner.
Mhm.
So no decisions are going to be made whatsoever.
Yeah.
I am just going to, I'm sharing this information so that it's not like all of a sudden a surprise. Ari, you don't seem to be traveling anywhere. You were in Belize. What happened?
Yeah.
Oh, I decided that was it. I just
Yeah.
forgot to tell anybody. And the other thing is, I mean, and I've had some criticism over this, and I mean, I basically put it in my blog post as more of a comment. Like, I mean, it's like, if in order for the ride to continue, how would I like to see it happen? Because the reality is from a financial perspective, I really can't afford to go much beyond Belize. Therefore, there's no point going to Belize. Like I said, GoFundMe is like really not an option that I like. I just don't like that option at all for reasons explained.
Mhm.
Ideally, and sponsorship is a complete waste of time. It's not worth the effort. By then, it'll take so many weeks that I'll have wasted so much money for nothing.
Yeah.
If I had my way, which I'm going to call a fantasy, meaning like likely will never happen, more than, yeah, basically will never happen. But my fantasy is that someone that is infinitely wealthy beyond means, which those people are out there, not that they'd be following my ride, but magically somehow they have been following my ride and they decide, hey, you know what? I got to see how this story ends. I got to see this guy to Argentina.
Yeah.
This is like pocket change. When I go to Vegas tomorrow, I'm going to spend 10 times more. I'm going to lose 10 times more than it's going to cost him to go to Argentina. And he writes me a check. Fantasy, yes, of course. I've actually had criticism like other people shouldn't be paying for this is your journey, yada, yada. It's like,
Yeah.
it's my journey, whether or not someone pays for it or not. I mean, nothing's going to change. I think people can see from the day one to like, I'm pretty consistent in who I am. I don't, you know, and expeditions get financed all over the world. And you think that because someone financed an expedition to some faraway place, that it's not a journey, it's not life transforming.
You
It
know how
just
many
someone else paid.
do you know how many like huge corporations just donate thousands and thousands just to look good? Like,
Yes, yes.
doesn't even have to be things that they're necessarily passionate about. It's just like, looks good on
Yeah,
paper. Here's some cash.
yeah. So my fantasy is that some very wealthy independent person is watching and he's seen how the story's progressed. He's seen all the generosity. You out
Where's all the
there,
wealthy people at?
yeah.
Let's hear from you.
And they go, you know what? This is actually a cool story. Like I said, I lose more than this when I visit Vegas on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then yeah, continue I go. You know, now I mean, like I said, there is one thing that I have not received any kind of response from Belize. My relationship is quite tense with them right now. I mean, financial savings would a financial savior would probably smooth that over quite nicely because they have just as much to lose as I do.
Yeah.
But it might be a situation where it's like I don't really have anyone to even watch my home anymore, kind of deal. And that's not, it's not like, and it's it's not easy to replace that kind of property manager because most people have no concept of what it's like to live in a jungle.
Yeah.
And many people don't have the skills. And it's not, I don't even have the skills. I rely on this guy, but it's like, well, when the water pump doesn't work, how do you fix a water pump? I have no idea. When the weed whacker burns out its motor, 6 weeks again, like every, how do you fix a weed whacker motor kind of deal? Because you don't just go out and buy a brand new water pump every 6 months and a brand new weed whacker every 6 months. Like all these things have to be repaired and maintained. And, how do you deal with termites and all that kind of stuff? And so if you're not jungle savvy, you're not going to, and then also just being in our road, my house, my home is down a 40 acre, it's on a 40-acre farm, but my home is on a road that requires 4x4 to get down. And often we close that road because there's too much water on the road and it's too muddy. And so to keep the road from being completely disintegrated, we prevent all vehicles. Well, then that means you have to walk a couple miles back and forth through the water. You know what I mean? And that's something some people have mentioned Airbnb, like, well, it is on Airbnb. It's been on since it was finished. But guess what? COVID hit like 18 months ago and Belize is still closed. That being said, even prior to that, I'm in a very isolated place. Not a whole lot of people want to go. And I don't have that many. And because not a lot of people want to go, I don't have a lot of reviews on Airbnb. If you've never been to Belize, you go to Airbnb and you see all these listings with 1,000 reviews. And then you see mine with like 4 reviews, I think. Well, where are you going to go? You're going to go with 1,000 reviews. Now, I suppose, of course, I could also pay 1,000 people to put fake reviews, but that's not who I am. So my place has 4 reviews. So I'm usually the last picked. And so I'm lucky if I get like a week's worth of guests, in a year. So I actually lose money. Technically, I lose money by putting it on Airbnb because Belize is now changed and is turning into this country where, they want to do inspections and they want to make sure it's safe and they want to yada, 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 and pay for this, pay for that, pay for your license, pay your taxes. So I actually lose money on Airbnb. But it is on Airbnb, but the whole world has been shut down since COVID. And I shouldn't say the whole world because, you can go on Airbnbs in the US, you go on Airbnbs here in Mexico, but Belize is actually closed technically and still until November. But they may even push that. I was actually just watching a video this morning about the COVID situation and the Prime Minister came online. And basically after watching that video, it's like, yeah, I'm obviously headed to Belize, but I'm not against making some detours and some check this place out. Like, there's no point in arriving in Belize tomorrow, because the country is way too much in lockdown, curfews and everything. But yeah, I can't. It is on Airbnb, but because of COVID, for 18 months, it's not available.
Wow.
Right? Did we cover? You think anybody is watching still?
I don't know. Anybody there?
Probably not. Yeah, anybody.
No,
right.
It's a great conversation to have. What's the call to action? What can people do? Like right now, what can people do besides commenting?
Well, subscribe for sure. Please don't like I said, my concern was that people are gonna come to the conclusion that I'm pessimistic, I'm negative and unappreciative, and that is the furthest from the truth. I'm trying to be realistic about my situation. And the effort that I have put forward, and the results from that effort. Would I do it all over again? Absolutely. It's only because of the generosity of the people that have been following this ride and that I've met that this ride has been what it is. So that's first and foremost. Like I said, right now, I'm not too excited about a GoFundMe thing. My conviction says it's wrong. I'm open for someone to change my mind. I've had a few people suggest, and it's like, yeah, okay, I can, but my mind has not been changed about GoFundMe. And so I guess if you happen to know someone independently wealthy, and of course, people don't ask for money for themselves. Hey, friend, can you give me $50,000 so I can buy a brand new car? of course, a wealthy person is not going to do that. But hey, friend, there's this guy, and this is what he's done so far. And his story has been absolutely amazing. And he has met so many people, and he is sharing this, and he does so much work. Anyways, he needs X amount of money to get himself to the bottom of Argentina. And I think that, you know, his story needs to be told, and he needs someone, and I know you can afford to. So I think you should finance the rest of his ride. But even that, like, that sounds so. I think you should, like, I think I should get someone to finance the rest of my ride.
Yeah.
How arrogant does that sound?
Yeah.
But I'm definitely like subscribing. Like I
Mhm.
said, you know, I'm gonna ask people for $60,000, and yet we can't get people to subscribe. And thank you, obviously, to those people that have subscribed. But I don't know. I right now is just, I guess, I don't know, in a sense, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, follow the ride, like the posts. I always appreciate comments that are positive. I don't get too many negative comments, but kind of deal. But you know, like I said,
Even just sharing this
I'm gonna
video.
keep doing what I'm doing. Sorry.
I just say just the importance of I know we say this a lot, but sharing the video, hitting that little share button. You may
Yeah.
have you may not have an answer for Ari, but maybe someone that you share it to would have an answer.
Yeah.
So just keep sharing, sharing, sharing. That'd be awesome. All right, should we wrap this up for today, Ari?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Well, thanks for letting that all out on us. It
Yeah.
was a great conversation. It's good to really understand the full situation, what's going on, rather than
Yeah.
trying
I
to
try.
piece it
I
all
mean,
together.
it's funny. I come from a very private family, in the sense that my parents don't tell me squat. They don't tell me nothing about nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, especially this kind of situation, it's like, I'm just going to put it out there. This is my situation.
Yeah.
You can love me, hate me. I actually don't really care. But
It's a good
I
story.
just like, I just kind of keep, I put it all out there. This is my situation.
Mhm.
You can either accept it or not, because, you know, but, you know, maybe not a negative, instead of a negative comment, just close the window.
You can do thumbs down because
I
it
work,
does help us in the
I work,
algorithm.
no, 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 no.
It helps us in
I
the
work,
algorithm.
I work too hard to get negative comments.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Thanks so much, Ari.
Yes,
Thank you
because I'm
guys for
rambling.
if you stuck through to the end, you're awesome.
Yeah,
Appreciate you.
you're a hero for sure.
Yeah. And we'll catch you later in the next episode of the Safari Arie Experience. Take care. Be
Bye.
well.